Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5 o'clock. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore. This is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus sport, business, travel updates, along with the newsmakers in person. Coming up, the Isle of Man's the first place in the British Isles to legalise assisted dying. We'll have a special report. It's Endometriosis Awareness Month. We hear from a sufferer with the condition. And the Public Service Commission's published its annual report. We'll be taking a look at it. That's all coming up in the next half hour. First of all, the update news headlines with Christian Jones.
Fastamai. The assisted dying bill will progress to the next stage after the Legislative Council voted to accept the House of Keys' changes to the proposals. Rob Mercer led the bill through the upper chamber and believes the combined amendments from both branches have strengthened the legislation.
This is just the end of the beginning. There is a huge amount of work and effort still to go before this bill can become operational.
Let's meet Chloe now, an endometriosis sufferer who's calling for more support to help women like her with the condition.
I would never have thought that, having been told that my ovaries stopped in my womb, that I would just be sent on my way.
She's suffered since the age of 12 and she thought of going private, but the cost of treatment could be in excess of £20,000. And an annual walk on the island raising awareness of Down syndrome has raised more than £10,000 for charity. In its fourth year, Teddy's Trundle sees a group walk the 21 kilometres from Peel to the terminus in Douglas. In international news now, and the US president is downplaying a security breach where a journalist was accidentally added to a group chat about military plans. His top officials have been summoned to answer questions from a Senate committee where Democratic Senator Mark Warner called for tougher accountability.
This is one more example of the kind of sloppy, careless, incompetent behavior, particularly towards classified information.
Meanwhile, Ukraine and Russia have agreed to a ceasefire to allow safe shipping to resume in the Black Sea. White House officials say they've had separate commitments from both countries to stop strikes on energy targets. And former actor Lawrence Fox has been charged with a sexual offence. It relates to a social media post last April. Those are the update news headlines, next at 6.
Thank you, Christian. Weather now. This evening will be dry with sunny intervals as the moderate northwest wind falls light. Staying dry tonight with some clear spells before it turns a little cloudier later. Light and variable winds, minimum temperatures around 3 or 4 Celsius. Tomorrow, mostly dry but largely cloudy. Any bright or sunny spells fairly limited. The wind will settle to the south or southwest and start to freshen through the afternoon with highs of 12 Celsius. Cloudy on Thursday, outbreaks of rain and drizzle developing from mid-morning, turning more widespread and persistent for a time later in the day and during the evening. Quite windy with a strong southwesterly wind, and maximum temperature once again around 12 Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Firestone Rubber Roof Shop for one-piece flat roofing systems. No joins, no leaks. We also line commercial box gutters in one piece up to 60 metres with a 20-year written warranty against leakage. Call Rubber Roof Shop on 49667.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
For a wide range of wood-burning stoves and a complete installation service, visit The Snug in Ramsey. And we don't stop there. Kiln-dried firewood and full aftercare service, including chimney sweeps and maintenance. Call The Snug in Ramsey.
Many people are struggling. You can help by volunteering or making a donation to Isle of Man Food Bank, whether it be food or essential items or financial support. Please call 646 999, brought to you by Descon Office Interiors.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And we begin with a story that's the number one story across the whole of the British Isles, and that's the assisted dying bill will progress to the next stage after the Legislative Council voted to accept the House of Keys changes. MLCs discussed the proposals again this morning, as Sean Cowper reports.
The assisted dying bill has divided opinion as it's progressed through the House of Keys and Legislative Council, with protesters gathering again outside legislative buildings this morning. MLCs previously made a number of amendments to the bill, but not all were supported by the House of Keys, forcing the upper chamber to consider the changes again today. One of the issues the two branches disagreed on was residency. The House of Keys rejected Legco's attempts to reduce the 5-year residency requirement, and while MLCs accepted that this morning, some still have concerns.
There potentially could be human rights challenges to this going along on the journey. For 5 years, if somebody has family members who have moved here, not been able to access this legislation.
Personally, I think 5 years is simply too long, and would be quite happy with 1 or 2 years or something similar.
Bishop of Sodor and Man, Tricia Hillis, sought support for a new amendment looking to ensure no one had to go through an assisted death alone.
When someone has made the deeply personal decision to die by assisted suicide, they should not be left to face it alone or in uncertainty, unless they have specifically chosen to do so and have made those wishes known.
Rob Mercer moved the bill in Legislative Council and believes it's now stronger than it was at the start of the process.
There has been significant public interest in this bill from its outset. The other place has diligently debated and scrutinised this bill. Our branch has diligently debated and scrutinised the bill. I believe that it's all the better for the refinements that have been made, both here in Legislative Council and in the other place. And for interested parties who still have concerns about the bill, I feel it's important to point out that this is just the end of the beginning. There is a huge amount of work and effort still to go before this bill can become operational.
MLCs voted to accept all the changes made by the House of Keys. Now the bill needs to be signed by 5 MLCs and 13 MHKs before it can be submitted for royal assent.
Meanwhile, the Chief Executive of Dignity in Dying, Sarah Wotton, says the approval of the Assisted Dying Bill by the Legislative Council was a historic moment for compassion in the Isle of Man and for the whole of the British Isles. As Siobhan Fletcher reports.
The campaign group paid tribute to Ramsey MHK Alex Allinson for bringing forward this change and his commitment to a detailed and comprehensive legislative process. In a statement, Mrs Wotton said this is for Sue Biggerstaff's husband Simon and Millie Blenkinsop French's son James, who died without a choice over their deaths, and for many more families who have tirelessly called for change. Sue and Millie have led the charge for choice in the Isle of Man, and their campaigning means no one will be forced to suffer at the end. She added, dying people and their families are the lifeblood of the movement for choice at the end of life, powering progress right across the British Isles. Increasingly, parliamentarians are listening to their experience, acting upon evidence from around the world, and crafting legislation that is safe, fair and right for each society, culture and healthcare system. The statement concludes with, change is coming across the British Isles, and the Isle of Man has led the way.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Ramsey commissioners confirm changes to the ward voting system won't happen ahead of April. Finlo Williams says the next step for the local authority is a public inquiry. He spoke to local democracy reporter Emma Draper.
So it was approved by Tynwald in February to hold a public inquiry. DOI originally set a very ambitious timescale to try and get it done before the coming election in April. That's not going to happen. The inquiry won't happen before the election, so there'll still be a 2-ward system in place for this election, which is a shame, but it's the same as it has been since the start, so just one more election to suffer through and then hopefully they'll be gone.
Why did the commissioners agree to do this?
Yeah, it's about fairness in voting. It doesn't seem fair, or it didn't seem fair, that only half of the town get to vote for someone that's standing to represent all of them. So it's fairness in voting, and originally it was argued that it was a cost saving. This day and age, with advertisements being on social media, things like that, the cost saving was fairly minimal. The main thing was that fairness. It doesn't seem right that you're voting for someone when half the town doesn't get the opportunity to vote for them, but they're still representing everyone. It just seemed bizarre.
And do you think then the next step might be to do sort of what Douglas Council did and reduce the number of people on the board as well? Or do you think actually that might be another problem for a way in the future?
It's been discussed a lot in some form when I've been on the board. The problem we've always faced, it's not just the monthly board meeting that we attend. There's lots of other roles, there's jobs that go on in the background. And what we found, certainly with the last board towards the end, we were a couple of members down, and it was a struggle for less than 10 people to be attending all those committees and meetings. So is 12 too much? I think it might be, but it's been discussed before and there's certainly no appetite to reduce that number yet. There'll be a new board soon. That might change. I don't know.
You're listening to Max Radio. This is Update. The Public Services Commission's published its long-awaited annual report for 2023-24, highlighting growing pressures on the Isle of Man's public sector workforce. It also marks the final report compiled under the Commission's former chair, Kate Lord-Brennan. Now, joining me in the studio is Christian Jones. So, Christian, it has to be said, this report has been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. In fact, several years' worth of Public Services Commission reports have actually been delayed, and that's despite legislation requiring them to be published as soon as practicable after the end of the financial year. So Kate Lord-Brennan, who was the chair up until recently, says she held back the reports because they weren't fit for purpose. But following pressure in Tynwald and a motion supported by members, all of the outstanding reports have now been released.
So if I've got this right, this report's effectively a year out of date, yes? And if so, what does it tell us?
Well, I mean, it offers a detailed snapshot of the public service workforce. So we have more than 4,100 full-time equivalent employees across 8 government departments, 8 statutory boards and 7 offices. There's been a 3.5% increase in staffing since last year, with Manx Care remaining the largest employer under the PSC, and that's accounting for more than 1,000 staff. But the report also flags a number of challenges. For example, the average age of the PSC staff is now 47, and that's 3 years older than the UK civil service. Sickness absence is on the rise, and that's with over 5.5% of work time loss. Stress, anxiety and depression are also remain leading causes.
Wow, that's quite a bit to take in. So are there any signs of improvement when it comes to retention?
Well, turnover is actually still a concern. Just over 7% of the workforce left in the last year, mostly through voluntary resignations and retirements. The report does say, though, a lack of detailed exit data actually makes it hard to know how many are leaving for the private sector and moving off island.
And what else then does the report highlight?
Well, there is a renewed focus on leadership training and development, particularly for staff in specialist roles, but have limited management experience. More than 320 training events were delivered, but cancellations and no-shows are becoming more common, usually because of workloads. If we look over on the HR side, the number of settlement agreements actually dropped quite significantly from 28 the previous year to 6, and that's saving around £1.7 million. There's also an update on the integrity line, and that's the whistleblowing system that was introduced in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. It recorded 40 complaints over the year, mostly HR-related and made anonymously.
OK, what's next for the Commission? And also, if I can add, can the public see this report online? Where would they find this?
Yes, you can see a comprehensive breakdown of this report at manxradio.com. But what's next for the Commission? Well, the Office of Human Resources, which is effectively a branch of that, is now actually working on a new government-wide people strategy, and that's following an external review. And what that's aiming to do is actually build a more agile, skilled, engaged workforce, if you will, and several key employment policies are due for review, and that's including fairness at work, whistleblowing and diversity.
Good work yourself, Christian. There's a lot to be going on with there, isn't there? Thank you for that.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, it's looking good down at the airport. The Liverpool-Loganair departure is due at 6 o'clock. And in terms of arrivals into the island tonight, the Loganair into Liverpool, the return flight is due in at 5 to 8, and then 25 minutes later at 20 past 8, the London City Loganair is due to arrive on time. And a little look out of the window, I can't see the Maxman just yet, although it is due in the next 20 minutes. In fact, I just had a look out the round window, and it's just in the harbour now, just turning round, ready to berth.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre, with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside.
A Douglas Central MHK says the sudden resignation of the Isle of Man government's chief executive is yet another knock for the civil service. Chris Thomas thinks now is the time to take a fresh look at how the island recruits its top civil servants. And that government chief executive, Andy Ralphs, announced he's stepping down at the end of the month, saying it wasn't an easy decision, but he needs some time out after the loss of a close family member. Well, we asked Mr. Thomas how long he thinks government had known this change was on the cards.
Probably a little while. There has been some talk of this possibility. People wanted me to know, but my thoughts are with the person concerned, with Mr. Ralphs, because he didn't come to the island that long ago. He's had a big job. He hasn't got a big job now. He mentions his mother's bereavement in his press release quote, and I wish him well, as I'm sure we all ought to do, because it's going to take some time for him to settle down. And one thing I noticed in his quote is he's going to stay living on the island. So good luck to him, and I hope he can move on from this.
We've already seen comments on our Facebook page. We've been contacted by listeners with people speculating that he was actually sacked or told to stand down. Do you think there's any weight in those speculations?
Well, we'll never know, and you'll have to ask the Chief Minister and even the Lieutenant Governor, because this is such a high position that it's a dual reporting responsibility. But look, the most important thing in this is getting through it. And I do remember when he was appointed, he was with a whole scutch of people who were appointed from off island all at once. I think there were 4 chief officers who all came at once. I do think there was concern at the time, even from me, that the nature of our public service and the senior officers in it was changing too quickly. So I do hope that a safe pair of hands, and that's what Mark Lewin is, he can hold the ship, work with the other chief officers, and we can actually think through what we really need from our chief executive officer, because he was the first occupant of that new position in its current form, and I don't think it was got quite right first time.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Changes are on their way to the Manx driving test from July. Ireland candidates will find it more in line with what learners have to go through in the UK. That means things like Show Me, Tell Me, in which your knowledge of the car and how it works will be included. But what do the local driving instructors think? Will this make the test easier, as some have suggested? Craig Hodgson at the Manx School of Motoring has been speaking to Manx Radio's John Moss.
They're still going to be tested, but they're just reducing the number of manoeuvres, which is currently 5 manoeuvres in total, down to 2. It's either going to be a left reverse, a turn in the road, a parallel or bay park. The emergency stop's going to be getting changed, so they're only going to be doing that 1 in every 3 tests apparently now, from the 1st of July.
Aren't emergency stops
at the moment,
important?
the emergency stops on every test.
Aren't they pretty important?
But they are, but even in the UK, it's not very often the emergency stop's carried out. All instructors are still going to be teaching all these manoeuvres. It's not that we're not going to be teaching it, but they're not going to be doing them on tests on every single test.
So there won't be this business of the instructor slapping their hand down on the...
well, they'll still do that, but they're only going to do it 1 in every 3 tests. Right. And then with regards to, like I said, the manoeuvres, the examiner will just choose on the day which one they're going to get.
See and tell is an interesting one, because that may involve getting the bonnet up, right?
Well, Show Me, Tell Me.
Show Me, Tell Me.
So the examiner, apparently they're going to start asking 2 questions. One will be with items under the bonnet. They could ask questions whilst on the test itself.
Under the bonnet, what
as in they'll lift the bonnet up and say...
Where's the oil going and that sort of thing?
Yeah, could you show me where you check the oil, or where you check the brake fluid, where you check the coolant. It could be things like that, and they're only going to ask 2 on every test. So 1 could be under the bonnet, 1 could be during the drive. The examiner might just say to you, when it's safe to do so, can you wash the front windscreen for me, or can you turn the fog lights on, or something like that.
I think one of the things you're keen on, getting more speed into this test, because generally it's in the area.
My personal views on it, I just think over the years there's been too much emphasis on manoeuvres, and I think there needs to be some out of town testing. Because there's no out-of-town testing. Yes, they do go into a 40 coming out of the test centre, but that's the maximum they're going to get. Me personally, I think they should be going out of town up into getting up to 50 mile an hour and demonstrating that they can drive at them speeds.
In future at Douglas, it will all be at 20 miles an hour.
So if the majority of the test is going to be 20, then they're not getting much speed practice at all. You can then go and get on the boat the same day as you pass your test, go and drive it up to 70 mile an hour on a UK motorway, having never even been over 50 mile an hour.
You're listening to Update on Manx Radio. An endometriosis sufferer says more needs to be done to help women like her with the condition. Chloe Love has suffered from it since the age of 12. March is Endometriosis Awareness Month, and 1 in 10 ladies have the disease, which causes severe pelvic pain, heavy periods, and infertility. Chloe says she's trying everything she can to deal with her plight, but she needs more help.
The GPs kept trying to expedite the appointment to move it forward. Nothing. I was trying to push for tests. I did have a locum refer me for an ultrasound. I had the ultrasound done when I found out that my left ovary is stuck to my womb with adhesions, which shocked me. I'll be completely honest, I did not expect that, because in their eyes I was under control, or my symptoms were supposedly under control because I was on the pill. But clearly the pill it wasn't enough. I guess that explains the amount of pain I'm in, because if things are stuck together and they shouldn't be, that would make sense. During that appointment, either she hadn't read that report from the ultrasound, or she had and she hadn't read the whole thing, whatever the reason is. When I said in the scan they found ovary stuck to my womb, she's like, oh, can't see it. And then she skimmed read and found it. Oh, yeah, there it is. And that just got me thinking, well, if I hadn't have heard the lady doing the scan saying that, I would have gone into that appointment none the wiser. And to kind of add insult to injury, I got a follow-up appointment to discuss the results of an MRI. The appointment is the middle of December, which is 9 months away. And by this point, I have no faith in the gynecology department, to be honest. I've had to do research. It could make me infertile or reduce my fertility. And as a 30-year-old woman, that's not what I want to be hearing.
What's your message to Manx Care?
Please help. I've fought this for years and I'm still fighting for it now. I'm doing all I can. I'm going to my GP surgery to get checkups. I'm working with a nutritionist. I'm trying everything. I'm herbal remedies as well, TENS machine, you name it. I've probably tried it. And I just wish that we could be helped.
You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. It's not known if any trees will need to be felled on the route to Eriestane if a wind farm is built there. The chair of Manx Utilities, John Wannenberg, has been responding to questions in the House of Keys as the authority moves ahead with the proposals. Mr. Wannenberg told the House trees at the site itself will have to be cleared to make way for the turbines. If approved, the £30 to £40 million project could be up and running by the end of 2026.
It is unknown at this stage whether any pruning above the highway boundary will be required, which is why surveys have been undertaken on the Newcastle Town Road recently. The outcomes of these surveys will be published within the environmental impact assessment alongside the planning application. In relation to the site itself, it is most likely that most of the non-native man-made plantation will need to be removed to accommodate wind turbines at the site. The environmental impact statement will include an assessment of the site and proposals to support wind farm development whilst minimising environmental impacts. However, it is fully intended to restore native Manx species to the area, in addition to retaining a screen of trees to the southern edge of the site, as was suggested to us during the public engagement sessions.
Thank you, Mr. Morehouse.
In the answer, reference is made to most of the trees in the plantation actually being removed. Is there an indication of how many trees that actually accounts for?
The completed design will be published alongside the planning application. We will of course provide the Honourable Member with an estimate or percentage once the final design is available. The design has been updated since the engagement sessions following feedback from the public to retain a screen of trees. The design will continue to be adapted to minimise the impact and will be built into the environmental impact assessment.
In terms of the advice that is being received about the environmental impact, is any advice being received from beyond Wardle Armstrong? Is it coming from DEFRA? Is it coming from any other third parties? Is it all down to the single agency that's been employed to provide this advice?
DEFRA are not carrying out any assessments for Manx Utilities in relation to this project. DEFRA are a statutory consultee as part of the planning process. They have and will be consulted by the planning department within the planning process.
Time now for sport. Here's Darren Timson.
Good evening. A local Isle of Man athlete has been selected to represent Great Britain this summer at the International Shooting Sport Federation Junior World Cup. Joshua Holden will appear for the nation in May this year at the prestigious event, which is set to take place in Seoul, Germany. The talented marksman, who previously secured an Island Games medal for the Isle of Man when he was just 14 years old, holds the island record for the 10-metre air pistol final and continues to make a name for himself on the national stage. British Shooting confirmed Joshua's selection this week as part of a strong Great Britain squad set to compete across multiple disciplines, including Olympic skeet, Olympic trap, air rifle, air pistol, 25-metre pistol and a rapid-fire pistol. Holden will compete in both the junior men's 10-metre air pistol individual and team events. In hockey, 2 league titles have been decided with Castletown ladies sweeping the awards. In the Women's Premier League, Castletown A were crowned champions after a 1-1 draw with Back as they saw their lead in the table stretched at 5 points with 2 games left. And in the Ladies Division 1, Castletown B were confirmed as table toppers after they beat their C team 7-0. Meanwhile, in the Men's Premier League, Backazay are now 1 point away from taking the title. And in rugby, 4 members of the Vagabond Ladies team will play county rugby over the next few months. Maylin Campbell, Leonie McGovern, Becca Hicks and Maisie Murray have all been selected for Cheshire after impressing in trials. Maisie Murray, the pick of the bunch, so as she earned a place in a Cheshire development squad.